The Iron Fire in Utah has burned 34 square miles, forcing an entire town to evacuate tonight. An extreme heat warning is now active for Iowa and Minnesota, with heat index values reaching 108 degrees. And 6.5 million people from Minneapolis to Fargo are inside Monday's slight risk storm zone. Those three situations are unfolding simultaneously, which means this is one of the heaviest weather days of 2026. The heat dome is not holding steady, it is intensifying, which means worse conditions are ahead. Good Lord. WPC forecasts heat index values of 115 degrees or higher across the south-central U.S. Plain and simple, we are tracking wildfires, a heat warning upgrade, severe storms, and tropical development at once. We will hit every threat zone city by city, which means your local conditions are covered right here. All of this is unfolding while wildfires rage, storms rotate, and a tropical system brews off Florida. Starting with the Iron Fire in Utah, now one of the largest active wildfires in the country tonight. This fire southwest of Salt Lake City has consumed 34 square miles of dry Utah terrain, which means the Iron Fire footprint is roughly 20 times the size of New York's Central Park. The most urgent development tonight is the mandatory evacuation order for Eureka, Utah. Dale, a retired electrician in Toledo, Ohio, has friends near Utah and is tracking the evacuation news tonight, which means roughly 1,000 Eureka residents are loading up vehicles and leaving their homes right now. Extremely dry fuel, low humidity, and gusty winds are driving this fire beyond what ground crews can handle, which means aerial firefighting tankers are critical, but strong winds continue to ground them across the region. Now shifting to Arizona, where a second wildfire near Sedona has burned approximately 300 acres today. That Sedona area fire is burning on steep, dangerous terrain, which means firefighter access is extremely limited. Red flag warning conditions are in effect across Utah, Arizona, Colorado, and New Mexico today, which means the Southwest is essentially one enormous tinderbox with 2 active fires and more ignition risk ahead. Type your city name in the comments below and we will check your local conditions tonight. Now on top of the wildfires, the heat dome is upgrading its threat level across the Midwest today. The National Weather Service has issued an extreme heat warning for northern Iowa and southeast Minnesota starting Tuesday, which means the heat alert has been upgraded to the highest heat warning category, NWS issues. Heat index values up to 108 degrees Fahrenheit are expected across Iowa, Minnesota, and Wisconsin on Tuesday, which means the body faces extreme and potentially deadly heat stress even during early Tuesday morning hours. A separate extreme heat watch is also posted for southern Illinois, southwest Indiana, and western Kentucky. That heat watch runs from Monday morning through Thursday evening, which means 5 straight days of dangerous heat. Within that heat watch zone, heat index values up to 111 degrees Fahrenheit are possible Monday afternoon, which means heat index readings of 111 degrees in southern Illinois and Indiana represent life-threatening conditions. Heat advisory conditions already extend from southeast Kansas through central Missouri and into the Ohio Valley. Frank, a retired teacher in Springfield, Illinois, says an extreme heat watch this early in summer is remarkable, which means Springfield and central Illinois face heat index values approaching 110 degrees starting Monday morning. The WPC heat index forecast for July 1st shows values exceeding 115 degrees across the south-central U.S., which means the heat dome peaks around July 1st, hitting its most extreme point of the entire summer. Overnight lows stuck near 80 degrees, which means the body never gets its natural overnight recovery window. Heads up, 34 square mile wildfire evacuation, extreme heat warning active, and 111 degree heat index on the way. Iron Fire burning in Utah, extreme heat warning covering Iowa, and 6.5 million in Monday storm zone tonight, which means this is not a drill for anyone inside these active and overlapping threat zones tonight. Now, city by city, the heat dome is pressing on nearly every major East Coast population center. Memphis, Tennessee, hitting 105-degree heat index by Sunday and staying above 100 for the full holiday stretch, which means Memphis has entered a 6th consecutive day heat advisory period with no meaningful break in sight. St. Louis, Missouri, up to a 105-degree heat index Sunday, which means both Missouri and Tennessee are locked in. Kansas City hitting 105-degree heat index through Monday, which means the Missouri River Corridor bakes without relief. Indianapolis, Indiana, reaching 108-degree heat index Monday, which means Indiana sits inside the extreme heat watch. Louisville, Kentucky, also in the extreme heat watch area, facing heat index values up to 111 degrees Monday, which means southern Indiana and western Kentucky face their highest heat index readings of the entire summer Monday. Chicago, Illinois, climbing to 110-degree heat index by Monday, which means Lake Michigan becomes the only cool refuge. Milwaukee and Green Bay, Wisconsin, both entering the extreme heat warning zone for Tuesday with index near 108. Minneapolis and St. Paul inside the extreme heat warning zone Tuesday, which means the Twin Cities bake hard. Cedar Rapids and Des Moines both in severe heat territory, which means Iowa faces dangerous conditions all week. Detroit, Michigan, hitting 108 to 110-degree heat index Monday, which means the Great Lakes region has no escape. Earl, a retired rancher in western South Dakota, says this heat dome reaches well into his territory. Rapid City, South Dakota, baking under 100-degree heat index, which means the northern plains are locked in too. Which means from Rapid City to Atlanta, the heat dome touches nearly every major U.S. city today. Atlanta, Georgia, at 108-degree heat index through Tuesday, while Nashville holds at 106-degree heat index today. Today's storm threat includes a slight risk covering 5.8 million people in the Carolinas and Iowa today. A mid-level disturbance is tracking into the Carolina Piedmont this afternoon, which means organized storms are firing. Charlotte, Fayetteville, and Columbia, South Carolina are all inside today's slight risk corridor for severe storms. Raleigh, Greensboro, and Wilmington, North Carolina are in the marginal risk zone with storm potential today. The primary Carolina threat is scattered 50 to 60 miles per hour wind damage with the strongest thunderstorm cores, which means storm-damaged power lines in the Carolinas already dealing with heat strain face additional stress today. West Texas also faces isolated severe gusts of 60 to 75 miles per hour along today's sharpening dry line this afternoon. Roaring back with a vengeance, wildfire evacuations in Utah, Carolina storms today, and Monday's big threat, loading. 34 square miles burning, 108-degree heat warning. Carolina's in the storm zone, and Monday still ahead of us, which means this pattern is not letting up at any point today, tonight, or into the work week. Now up north, where a bow echo moved eastward along the Minnesota-Iowa border this morning at high speed. That bow echo produced 60 to 70 miles per hour gusts this morning, which means widespread damage has already occurred. Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and communities near the Minnesota-Iowa border are now assessing tree and power line damage, which means the power grid in northern Iowa and southern Minnesota is already strained heading into tonight. Tonight, the severe weather focus shifts westward into western South Dakota and southern North Dakota. Elevated supercells overnight carry large to very large hail risk, which means baseball-size hail is possible again. The environment tonight over western South Dakota into southern North Dakota has a very strong wind field aloft, which means any storm firing overnight will have significant rotation and produce all three severe weather hazards. Wisconsin also faces a zone of low-level warm advection tonight, which means elevated storms and hail are possible. Which means the Midwest from Wisconsin all the way through the Dakotas faces a long overnight storm window. Margaret, a retired nurse in Lake Charles, Louisiana, says this prolonged weather event is unlike anything she remembers. Fargo, North Dakota, sits in the marginal risk zone with 24 million people in the broader surrounding corridor, which means the northern plains from the Dakotas through Wisconsin faces a continuous storm threat through Monday. Now, tonight's overnight storm scenario across the northern plains deserves everyone's full attention right now. A capping EML has delayed storm development all day, which means atmospheric energy is fully loaded for tonight. Once the cap erodes after dark, elevated supercells will fire across western South Dakota into southern North Dakota, which means the 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. window in the Dakotas is the overnight peak risk period. Large hail up to 2 inches is the primary threat tonight across the elevated overnight storm track. Severe wind gusts are also possible as storm clusters organize, which means a wide impact overnight event is likely. Which means even Bismarck and Pierre residents who are not under direct warnings need to maintain shelter awareness. A lee cyclone deepening near northeastern Colorado tonight will surge low-level moisture northward into the plains. That moisture surge directly feeds Monday's main storm scenario, which means Sunday night sets up Monday's event. No joke, tonight is the setup, and Monday is when this storm pattern reaches its full peak. Y'all Iron Fire evacuating 1,000 residents. 108-degree heat warning in Iowa. And Monday, atmosphere fully loaded, which means the next 36 hours rank among the most critical weather periods this country has seen. Do yourself a solid. Check your shelter plan, charge your devices, and know your emergency contacts. Monday's storm outlook is centered on one of the most dangerous atmospheric environments of the entire summer. The SPC Day 2 slight risk covers 6.5 million people from Minneapolis to Fargo and Sioux Falls, which means the Monday storm zone is larger in population than all of today's North Dakota watch counties. Monday's atmosphere holds over 4,000 joules per kilogram of CAPE, which means storm fuel is extreme. Which means any storm that fires Monday immediately becomes extremely intense with all 3 severe hazards active. The SPC shows a 5% tornado probability centered on Grand Forks and Grafton, North Dakota for Monday, which means northwest Minnesota and the Red River Valley carry a concentrated tornado risk Monday afternoon and evening. Minneapolis, St. Paul, Fargo, Duluth, and Sioux Falls all fall within the Monday slight risk storm zone, which means every major upper Midwest city faces large hail, severe winds, and tornado potential on Monday. Sandra, a retired librarian in Alexandria, Virginia, is watching the Monday storm forecast with real concern tonight. Effective shear over 50 knots with 4,000 plus joules per kilogram MLCPAP means Monday could produce significant and destructive tornadoes. The ECMWF model shows a potential MCS, a large organized storm complex tracking through north-central Minnesota, which means if that ECMWF scenario verifies, northern Minnesota faces a widespread damaging wind event Monday night. Post your city in the comments below so we can cover your Monday storm timing and forecast. Minneapolis has a 2% tornado probability Monday, which means the metro area is not risk-free, which means Minnesotans need to treat Monday as a full severe weather preparedness day from morning through night. The surface low deepening in the eastern Dakotas and lifting northeast is the engine driving Monday's entire event, which means tracking that surface low Sunday night tells us exactly where Monday's worst storms land. The NHC is watching a disturbance off the Florida coast, which means a tropical development chance has emerged, which means residents from Jacksonville to Miami need to monitor this system as the coming days unfold. Saharan dust is reaching Florida and the Gulf Coast, which means air quality alerts are now active, which means South Florida faces a 2-punch combination of Saharan dust and heat dome conditions simultaneously. Burn this into your memory. Iron fire, extreme heat warning, Monday supercell threat, and tropical development. Locked and loaded, 4 active threats across 4 regions simultaneously: wildfires, heat, storms, and tropics. Which means this weather setup is genuinely one of the most complex multi-threat patterns of the entire summer. A massive upper-level ridge locked over the central and eastern U.S. is the engine behind all of this. That ridge bends the jet stream northward, which means hot Gulf air streams north into the Midwest continuously, which means the heat dome has a constant energy supply, making it extremely resistant to any breakdown. Meanwhile, the western trough provides the energy for Monday's severe storm setup across the northern plains, which means the same pattern giving you 111-degree heat is simultaneously fueling Monday's supercell threat. Models show the ridge holding through the 4th of July holiday period with no significant pattern breakdown, which means no significant heat relief arrives before the 4th of July holiday period. The WPC heat index forecast for July 1st shows values of 115 degrees or higher across the South, which means the South Central U.S., Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, Arkansas faces near record heat index values. Good grief, heat index values approaching 115 degrees make July 4th outdoor events genuinely and seriously dangerous. If you are planning 4th of July outdoor events east of the Rockies, you need a backup plan, which means outdoor fireworks shows, concerts, and gatherings need shade structures and water stations standing by. The heat wave peaks near July 1st before a modest pattern shift begins around July 5th or 6th, which means the first week of July is the absolute peak danger period for heat-related illness nationwide. Monday's storms across Minnesota, the Dakotas, and Wisconsin are not the end of the active severe weather season. A new storm system approaches the plains by Wednesday, which means more severe weather potential arrives midweek, which means severe weather remains in full rotation through the first week of July with no real break. Mark my words, 34 square mile iron fire, 108-degree heat warning for Iowa, and 4,000 joules per kilogram CAPE for Monday. Honest to goodness, this is the most active and dangerous multi-threat stretch the country has seen all summer, which means staying informed and having a clear plan is the most important action you can take today. If you are near the Iron Fire evacuation zone in Utah, follow all official orders and leave immediately. If you are in the extreme heat warning area in Iowa, Minnesota, or Wisconsin, stay indoors Tuesday. Which means Tuesday in those extreme warning counties is not a day for any outdoor activity at all. The extreme heat watch zone in Illinois, Indiana, and Kentucky sees its absolute heat peak Monday through Thursday, which means those communities need cooling center plans, hydration protocols, and welfare checks for elderly residents. If you are in the Dakotas or Minnesota, begin storm shelter preparation today while conditions are still calm, which means knowing your shelter location before Monday evening is absolutely non-negotiable for families in those zones. Turn around. Do not drown if any flash flooding develops behind tonight's severe storm clusters in the Dakotas. Keep your NOAA weather radio on tonight if you are anywhere in the northern plains or upper Midwest. Which means tonight and Monday require sustained weather awareness for millions of Americans across the storm corridor. Stay hydrated. Stay indoors during peak heat hours. And check on elderly family members and neighbors daily. The fires, the heat wave, the storms, and the tropical system all connect to the same pattern. Which means none of these threats eases quickly. They all reinforce each other across the stuck ridge. No easy relief arrives before the 4th of July, which means the holiday period carries serious weather risk. Heads up, the most dangerous heat of 2026 is still building and has not peaked yet. 34 square mile iron fire, 108-degree heat warning for Iowa, 6.5 million in Monday's storm zone that is tonight.